Hello, this is John Aker, call sign Nomad. This is my YouTube channel. The top line of the splash screen is their YouTube is calling a handle, part of the URL to find this channel, youtube.com/@John Aker, aviating author. And note the dots, the periods between the last four words. That forms the handle. This introduction is the first of more than a dozen videos that I generated that follow my autobiography, recollections, my life in and out of the military. And they will represent planes I flew during the 18 years of active flying status I was on during my 20-year military career as a United States Air Force pilot. I found software that runs in the computer flight simulator world, matching airplanes that I flew in real life. And I narrate them with a narrative stream of consciousness, stories of what was happening in my life during the times when I flew those airplanes. And, well, they're war stories, you know, of course. And in war stories, you have to be careful because the first liar ain't got a chance. You'll learn a little bit about computer flight simulators and videos, the equipment I use to get it done, and we'll have some fun. And check your six back there. I might be on your tail. Nomad is back. Let's take a look at the rest of this series. Here we are in that listing of all the videos I'm going to be putting out. The highlighted one says we're at Bartow flying the PA-18 by Piper, the J3 Super Cub near Winter Haven, Florida. If you want to go through all the whole list, you could pause the video here and check it out, and then resume, pick up. We'll go in and look at the rest of this video about flying the Yellow Bomber, the Bamboo Bomber PA-18 Super Cub. Hello there, my name is John Aker, call sign Nomad, and I'm going to put together a few video clips beginning with the airplanes I flew in pilot training in the U.S. Air Force. Won't include all the airplanes I've flown, but a good majority of them. This first one, you can see it's a small airplane. We're at Bartow Air Base, Florida, in Central Florida. My flying class 57I was divided between three different bases. Those of us who went to Bartow got to fly tail draggers. We're the last of the real pilots in the Air Force. We began in this airplane, Piper Aviation's PA-18 J3 Super Cub. That meant it had a 90 horsepower engine. So on a good day, if you're following a highway, most of the cars on the highway would not pass you. This is primary flight training. It was Bartow was a civilian contract school. The Air Force contracted with civilians to do the beginning flight training, so they wouldn't waste their own pilots on those of us who washed out of flying training, if we did. My civilian instructor was William C. Branson. Never forget him. I'm sure his friends called him Bill, but the four of us at his students at his table called him Mr. there was a lot of respect for these civilian pilots, many of whom had flown in World War II. There was a military presence. As I recall, we had 2 or 3 Air Force officers who were instructor pilots who occasionally did flight checks, and we all had to fly with one of them for the final check before we could move on to the next phase of training. This Piper that we're flying here is what she looks like from the outside. We'll swing around for a better view of her and move in. Open the doors. See the 2 half doors flip open. This shows the solo pilot sitting in the back seat. Many of the earlier single engine tail draggers, the solo pilot had to sit in the back seat to maintain a center of gravity within limits. Later on, and in the PA-18 that we flew, flying from the front seat was approved and okay, which gives you a little better view of over that nose. Notice you don't have any much vision looking forward on this plane. Let's close those doors and get back inside. And we leveling. This airplane did have some metal, but most of the fuselage and the wings and tail were metal tubing covered with fabric. So we referred to her as the bamboo bomber. Let's release the brakes and see if we can get it up. One other thing before we go here. There's 2 bars you see in the upper left corner. Those give me in X-Plane 11 flight simulator for outside views like this. They give me airspeed and altitude information since I don't have visual access to the instruments. And you notice on the instrument panel, there aren't many of them. An altimeter and an airspeed indicator, and a little in the middle is what we called a whiskey compass. It worked just fine straight and level. If you were in a turn, dive, or climb, it didn't work too well. So let's put a little power to it. We'll be checking left and right, trying to keep yourself straight down the hang on there. Getting a little torque. Torque tends to drag the nose to the left. The tail just flew off the ground and now we're airborne. At this point, if we were flying a different airplane, we'd get the gear up and the flaps up, but in the Cub, we weren't bothered with those niceties. The gear was fixed and there were no flaps. Flying the Cub was basic aircraft control, learning how to keep her straight and level. Now I'm going to switch to a view out the side, looking to the right, and you can see those V struts going from the airplane up to the wing, and that bar going between the 2 of them is a jury strut. And you could maintain reasonably well level flight by judging where that bar was in relation to the horizon. Okay, we're off the ground close enough. I think I'm going to move up into the front seat now so I can see a little better. In flight, you couldn't do something like that. One of the exercises we did was what's called S turns along a road. Let's see if we can see this road that's coming up under the nose. There it is. There's a 2-lane highway. Okay, we cross it perpendicular. And start a 180-degree turn. Really shouldn't be doing it this close to the airport. But then, since we're in a flight simulator and I've got control over, we just crossed the road. We're going to do a S 180-degree turn the opposite direction. Whoa, whoa. Not too far. It's a little hard to, in a flight simulator, orient where you are in the air. You may notice me glancing over to my right. There we go. We're perpendicular to that road again. We're crossing over the road. We'll start another turn the opposite direction. Those are S's along a highway. The instructor to watch to see if we maintain reasonable control of airspeed and altitude as we perform the maneuvers. Another basic maneuver was learning what it feels like when the airplane quits flying. This is good training. Saved my butt a couple of times later on in other airplanes. When the airflow over the wings is disrupted because of the angle of attack is too high, the wing stalls. And when the wing stalls, you're not flying anymore. Let's do one here. We'll do a power on stall. Get back in the cockpit here. Okay, we're about to have power on, and we're doing about 60 knots. We'll do and in real life you do two 90-degree clearing turns before you went into the maneuver. Make sure there weren't any airplanes around that you're going to fall on top of or run into. And we'll just bring the nose up, leave the power set where she is. Power on stalls. There she goes. The fall and the nose fell. Added a little power. Leave the nose down if there's room. Gain your airspeed back. Speed is life, says the fighter pilot. You always trade airspeed for altitude. If you've got excess altitude, airspeed, you can climb and trade it for altitude. If you've got altitude, you can dive and trade your altitude for airspeed. Okay, we're about 900 feet, which was pattern altitude for us in the Cub. You can see the remnants of 3 runway layout here Tail draggers aren't too good at crosswinds, so they often made 2 or 3 runways. So you had the active runway had minimal crosswind. There's Bartow. They closed one of the original 3 and built a new runway parallel to the east-west runway that we're going to come back in on. We took off on one of those east-west runways. Okay, we're on downwind for runways 09, landing to the east. Downwind is parallel to the runway, flying the opposite direction you're going to land. We didn't actually fly the Cub out of Bartow. We flew from an auxiliary field, and to be honest, I don't remember the name of it or where it was, and I couldn't locate anything on my maps. That might have been it. We're turning base leg now. Base leg is 90 degrees to the direction of landing. We'll ease the power off and begin to lose a little altitude. Let's come back here because we overshot base leg. That's a little better heading. Overshot final. Didn't turn early enough. It's a pretty clean airplane. I got no power on, and we're still 70 miles an hour. We should be down about 60 for landing on final, maybe 50 for. Remember, this is a tail dragger, so we need to get that tail nose up. And keep the stick back so the nose doesn't pitch down. You're trying to get into a 3-point attitude so that you touch down with all 3 gear at the same time. It stalls as you touch the runway. If nothing else, land tail wheel first, it'll never bounce. I was pretty good at bounce recoveries. Okay, from here we taxi in to a parking spot somewhere, shut down, let the next student pilot take her up for their turn in the air. Like that RAF pilot told Winston Churchill when asked what it was like to fly in the RAF. He said, "Sir, it's hours and hours of boredom, interspersed by moments of stark terror." And sometimes it was. Mostly it was just good flying. That wraps up our first clip flying the PA-18 out of Bartow Air Base, Florida. This is Nomad saying so long. If you're in the air, keep an eye on your 6. That's your tail, because you might see me back there with the business end of a Spitfire. Signing off. If you enjoyed some of this material, you might reach up there and click that like button. Want to come back, hit the subscribe to this channel. This is John Aker, call sign Nomad, flying flight simulators based on my career as a U.S. Air Force pilot.
They took the blue from the skies and a pretty girl's eyes and a touch of Old Glory's hue, and gave it to the men who proudly wear the U.S. Air Force blue. The U.S. Air Force blue. Oh, they are men with a dream on America's team. They're a rugged